views rather than off questions. So if you want to give me the respect of asking me if I meant sexual or not, you should have done that, and that's perfectly fine.
Hey guys, welcome to Little Black Book 91. Listen, look, all week y'all have been blowing me up since the weekend because of my video that I did. Y'all felt it was an unpopular opinion about the way I discussed this particular topic. So I thought I'd go back and watch it again and see what you guys are actually talking about. Now, let me be honest with you. I went back to watch it. I'm going to be honest with you. I went back to watch it, guys. Okay? All right? And I'm going to be honest with you. I stand by what I said. I stand by what I said. First and foremost, when I look at the situation between Kosheia and Alonzo, everybody jumped down the bandwagon of, if she has sexual boundaries, you shouldn't push it, da 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 da. And I think like a lot of people missed it. Go back, and I'm going to play the clips. She actually wasn't pissed about the type of question he asked. What she was annoyed about was being called immature for actually stating that she didn't want to answer the question. And everybody jumped on the bandwagon. A lady can have her boundaries if she wants. Da, 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 da. And they made it into a gender war. And now it's gone viral. And it's all about this gender war. When really and truly, they missed it. What she was actually really saying was, first and foremost, question. I didn't mind if it was. I didn't think it was inappropriate to ask a question. Okay. My problem was when you decided to call me immature for not answering the question. I didn't want to answer it. I think that's fair. Right? And then the second point she had was, don't try to gaslight me by saying it wasn't a sexual question when it was. But that's not the reason why she didn't want to answer. She said, I just don't want to state my preference. But then if you pretend as if you don't know it's a sexual question, yeah, she gonna call you out, of course. Which is why I said he was gaslighting her, because he downright knew it was a sexual question. Right? But that was not the original reason as to why she didn't want to answer it. She didn't want to answer it simply because she didn't want to answer it. You know what I mean? And that's up to her. That's her prerogative. I'm not mad at it. But the reality of the situation was, it wasn't just because it was a sexual question. It's because she just didn't want to answer it. And it's quite interesting as well. Like I said, I think, that we were talking about this on the super panel, that earlier on in their conversations, they already had some naughty questions, right? I said a naughty question when he said about him talking about, being, if you were to get pregnant or whatever, right? And in this instance, unfortunately, he missed the turning, right? Because unfortunately, the person he was asking, may not have been necessarily 100% comfortable, but she answered it, right? She answered the question, which was cool. She answered the question and she went on further, and it was cool. The issue behind this whole situation is not the sexual question. It's the fact that he did not want to honor the fact that she didn't want to say no, and he tried to flip it by saying it wasn't a sexual question, almost as if he was embarrassed by asking the question and suddenly he wants to turn it around. You know what I mean? So that's what's interesting. So I'm going to play the clip, and I'm going to get Sean on in a second as well. So I want to play the clip because I went back through it. I said, no, let me go back through it. Let me get back to it. Hold on, sorry. Let me get to it.
Points have come up.
Okay, hold on. I need to go to. Here we go. Wait.
I said, hey, that's not a.
There we go. Okay. All right. So we're gonna just go slightly back. All right. Cool. And then play a little bit of clip and then see this. Right. Here we go.
Spring, right? And everyone I answered, boom, 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 boom. You threw out choked or spanked. I said, hey, that's not a question I'm willing to answer.
So let's start there, because obviously that's the first part, right? Okay. She says first and foremost, hey, it's not a question she's willing to answer. She didn't want to answer that particular question. He was asking questions back and forth. Boom, 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 boom. Cool. The question was, again, she wasn't offended by the question. Okay. All right. She wasn't offended by the question. She actually says she's not offended by the question. It wasn't even that she thought it was inappropriate. This is why I wanted everyone to slow the heck down. And it was like, slow the heck down. Okay. Listen to what she actually said. Right. She actually said the question, and we're going to play the clip in a second or two. It wasn't inappropriate, but him not respecting her boundary to say, I don't want to answer it, is where there was an issue. And that's where I feel there's a major issue. Right? And it's not just about being sexual. It's about the fact that why wouldn't you want to honor her boundary at that point in time? I know why, because I think you were trying to play. You were trying to make her uncomfortable. You were trying to, he said it earlier on, he was trying to make her feel uncomfortable, and not necessarily to be creepy about it, but that's his way of kind of, I guess, not even flirting, but maybe I should say in a way of, you know, some people like to throw curveball questions to kind of catch you off guard. They like feeling like they've got a little bit of a level on you. They like to feel like they got control of the conversation, right? Some people do it by over intellectualizing. Some people do it with with like throwing curveballs. Some people do it by, dominating the conversation and not letting you speak. People do different tactics in that particular way, right? So we'll play that part, right?
My answer for you caused you to say, I don't know how this got sexual.
Correct.
Correct. That's right. I never felt the question of being choked or spanked was inappropriate. I told him, you don't need to know my preference in that.
Let's pause it right there. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much. That's exactly what I'm talking about. First and foremost, the question wasn't inappropriate. She didn't think it was inappropriate. What the issue is boundaries. If she says no and says, this is my boundary, yes, he should have respected that boundary. I agree 100%. He should have respected that boundary. Okay. All right. Miss Ione said the question was inappropriate to her and that's why she didn't answer. Well, you're telling me that, but that's not what she said. She actually tells us it was not inappropriate. This is why I'm saying that some people are taking it a little bit further. She actually said it wasn't inappropriate. What do you want me to do about it? And that's what I'm saying about the fight becomes an unnecessary fight, because now we're trying to argue and say but she blatantly came out and said it was not inappropriate. If she hadn't said anything at all, I think we can then fill in the blanks. She actually filled in the blanks for us and told us it wasn't an inappropriate question. She just didn't want to answer it. Hence why when I said about sexual tension is why I got to that point that I thought it was sexual tension, because if it was inappropriate, she would have said it's inappropriate. But the fact it's not inappropriate, I was like, well, maybe she's playing her little game too. She's like, well, I'm gonna answer what I want to answer. I'm gonna answer whatever I want to answer. If I want to answer, I'm gonna answer it. Game her, and she was like, nah, I got your number, don't worry. I'm gonna answer what I want to answer. I'm gonna let you know you're not in control here. That's how I was seeing it. I can't lie to you, that's how I was kind of seeing it. You know what I mean? Like, because she let us know.
I became offended and disrespected when he told me that I was immature to assume that this question meant anything sexual.
I do apologize if you...
And that is where the issue came to, man. That is where the issue came to, okay? That's where the issue came to, right? That she felt like she was offended. See, look what we're doing now. People are in the chat trying to tell us what she said, and I'm playing a clip for you for what she said out of her own mouth. Why do you want to tell her how she feels? It's inappropriate for you. It is not inappropriate for her. I think we need to be very careful not to project how we feel about the situation. She's telling us outright she's cool. This is not a reading it. This is not about trying to read into it. This is not about trying to project. The person is telling you outright in the situation, I didn't think it was inappropriate and I didn't have a problem with the question. I just didn't want to answer it. Cool. And the brother was pushing her boundaries. He shouldn't be doing that. And he will have the consequences to the action. Okay? So, and we're talking about, obviously, people, asking about kinks. People are asking about sucking toes. Was Alexis being inappropriate when she asked Jonathan if they can suck toes? No, we don't think that's inappropriate, do we? Because we understand context. Context of a situation. So whilst we're saying it's inappropriate to ask a question about kinks, yet there is a woman asking a man, do you suck toes? Is that sexual? Because I think that's sexual. But it's context. So in reality, in the situation here, what she has told us, I think we should take it on board. Yeah?
You thought I was going sexual. I wasn't coming from a sexual place.
The general population of the world would agree that those three words woven together has a sexual connotation. But I will not continue to sit here and debate with you.
And that's exactly what actually happened. This is why I said about sexual tension. That's exactly what I was really trying to state. Okay? That's exactly what I was trying to state. That this became, it felt like an intellectual battle between two foes. Right? That is what I was saying. I was like, that's what I was seeing. When I said about sexual tension, I was like, I'm seeing a battle between two intellectual foes, because her whole premise here is that I'm not gonna sit here and debate with you. What? Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. You know, of course. You know what I mean? I felt like they were having this. It felt like they were having this underground battle kind of tussle. It's like, you're not gonna pull me out of position. I'm not gonna let you pull me out of position. I see what you're trying to do, and I'm not gonna let you do it to me. That's what it felt like. Because instead of her saying, "Hey, the question was inappropriate," I feel like I didn't have to answer it. She didn't want to go there. She said, "No. I'm gonna stand my own two ground and tell you straight. Listen, it wasn't inappropriate, okay? But I had a problem with you calling me immature." Right? So he broke her boundaries. That's what he shouldn't have done. Right? And then he gaslighted the situation by going on like he didn't know the question was sexual. Now, of course, I think what he really means is, I'm not trying to make it a sexual conversation. But the reality is the question is of a sexual nature. And that's why I said in my other review, you can't play dumb. You can't pretend as if you don't know it's a sexual question you're asking. Can't pretend. Right? Can't pretend. You get what I'm saying to you? So that's what I was saying. You can't pretend.
So from this moment forward, we can change the subject.
Right.
Or tonight's date will be over.
Got you. I completely understand
you.
where you're coming from, and I respect.
And she was like, "Let me put this boy in his place." Let me put this boy in his place. You know what I mean? It's like, let me put this boy in his place. All right? Let me let him know there's levels to this. You ain't gonna play that game with me, boy. You know what I'm saying to you? Just let me put you in some place. So, hey, maybe sexual tension is a little bit too far. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. But, I mean, that's how I saw it. I was like, okay, there could be a little bit of tension here. You know what I mean? That's how I was reading it, because she wasn't frustrated by the question per se. It was more to do with the fact that he didn't respect her boundaries. And I felt like they were kind of pushing each other's boundaries. For instance, like I said, when she put her hand in his face, it's part of the pushing of boundaries. And that's why I said, when I take into context everything that was happening, how I got to that conclusion, it wasn't just because of that moment. I think many people focus on the end moment, and I was taking the whole thing into account, that they had already been doing some jousting between the two of them already a little bit. You know what I mean? They haven't been jousting. No, I may be wrong, but I could see there was a little bit of jousting going between the two. Let me get Sean on in a second as well too. But let me play that little clip again for you guys. Those who didn't hear it, I want to play it for you guys just one more time. Okay, because she does let us know.
Make you feel.
Well, you were throwing out questions, black or white, summer or spring, right? And every one I answered, boom, 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 boom. You threw out choked or spanked. I said, hey, that's not a question I'm willing to answer. My answer for you caused you to say, I don't know how this got sexual.
Correct.
Correct, it's right.
Yeah, it's at that point when he tried to play it off like that, like he didn't know. When you try to play off like he didn't know, you can't play that game. You just can't. Like you can't play that game. You know what I'm saying to you? You can't play that game. You missed it. You know what I'm saying to you? Like I'll just come out and say, listen. You don't want to answer that question. My thing is also, if she didn't express to you that she had a problem with the question, she didn't want to answer it, right? And you could have moved on. Why? She didn't lock off the conversation, doesn't feel like, right? So why then project into the conversation? That's my thing with him, is that it feels like he projected into a conversation by almost saying it's sexual when she's saying that, hey, I just want to answer the question. You get what I'm saying to you? It's almost like he's projected into the situation. So yeah, I was like, whoa, I felt like, you know what, bro, that's the biggest problem you're actually having here, is that you're almost pretending as if you don't know what happened, but the reality of the situation, it was a sexual conversation. Well, at least it was a sexual question, in that regard as well. So, let me, okay. Bridget O said, why didn't she want to answer a question? Because it was a sexual question, I guess. Maybe that's what it is. So that's the reason I should have learned in school. Hey, I guess I see it differently. That's all. That's all, Miss Ernie. I understand. Maybe I see it differently, and I totally understand that. Maybe we just see it differently. You know what I mean? Maybe that's a deductive reasoning. Maybe I'm just not that smart. You know what I mean? Maybe not. You know what I mean? So I understand. Sean, talk to me, bro. If he's there.
I'm here. I'm here.
There you go. Talk to me, bro.
Why did you wake up and choose this type of violence today? Like, what's going on with you, huh?
You know what? I got a lot of comments and people were, frustrated visibly with the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was quite an interesting conversation. Because I think, I think there's some truth to a lot of comments that we made. I think there's also some different ideas that people throwing out that I can understand. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think it's almost like the which comes first, the chicken or the egg. You know what I mean? Because she was offended at some point. So I think it's one of those. It becomes inappropriate when she chooses not to answer. So there was a level of inappropriateness. Now she can say she wasn't, the question wasn't an inappropriate question, but we can infer when someone chooses not to answer question, it's because they don't feel like they should have to answer it because it's an inappropriate topic or something they don't want to talk about with that person. Now, she might not have been offended by the question, right? So it might not have been like, oh, I felt like, I'm being harassed, but she was like, I'm just choosing not to answer, and that's fine. I think we just have to find the language to explain it, but there was something about the question that she didn't like, because if she liked the question, then she would have been more open to answer it. So I think there's just some gray area nuance in there where perhaps she felt it like, oh, it's cheeky, it's playful, he's asking me this, but hey, I for whatever reason, I'm choosing not to answer it. And he made the mistake of continuing to push a narrative like, why don't you want to answer it? This isn't sexual. You should have asked me if it was sexual. Then that's where he just really doubled down and just made the whole thing bigger than it needed to be. I don't know if you saw his YouTube video. I put it in our group chat.
No, I missed it.
Yeah, he did a YouTube video about this whole thing, and he's really just it's just a he's these questions are some game that he has out that he's promoting.
Okay.
And then he just said more of the same, pretty much like, oh, um that when your woman is sitting by the if she's standing in the kitchen and you see her with her her cheeks out, and then you just spank her cheeks, that's not sexual. Or if you're giving her a kiss and you put your hand around her neck, just more foolishness, bro, because all of those things are not like, I think really we're dealing with somebody who is very, very immature. And don't even, I hope anybody hears me talking and it's like, oh, you're defending him. No, I'm not. I think he's blatantly wrong. We talked about this a myriad of times. So no, I'm just explaining the context of the video and what happened. And in the context of the video, what he's trying to say is it wasn't sex, but he doesn't understand that those are sexual acts. When you're smacking a woman on her butt, that's still a sexual act. It may not be sex, the act of intercourse, but is a sexual act. And if you're kissing somebody and you happen to choke them, that is also a sexual act. And her offense was because it just wasn't a conversation that she felt like they should have. So she was like, you can ask me. And I think you make a valid point. Like Alexis talked about the toe licking, right? So if that was something for, who was she talking to? Jonathan at the time? So if that was something that Jonathan didn't want to talk about, then Jonathan would be like, oh, not really my thing, sis. and he would have moved on. Now, if she kept persisting, then they would be in the same situation that Alonzo and Kosheia were in, right? Because it's not the question. So I get your point back to what you're trying to say, is it wasn't like she was so blown away at the question. However, she felt like I shouldn't have to answer that question. And once I tell you no, you should just move on.
Yeah, and I think that's the point I'm trying to nail, right? It's that she wasn't offended by the question in itself, right? But once she stated that she didn't want to answer the question, maybe she felt like, hey, answering this question would open up a door to a myriad of other questions. Maybe she felt answering this question would make her have a particular perception, or maybe she felt like, oh, maybe answering this question would, create a reputation or something like that, right? So she doesn't want to engage in that conversation. Right. And that's what I'm saying. She has every right to do that. Right. And then when she says no, right, he should not project into the conversation that, or maybe ask, saying, I can't remember if it was, let me see if I can, yes. So, because I have a little bit of evidence, right? So what actually happened was she actually let him know is the type of conversation it is. She ain't trying to have that kind of conversation, right? She doesn't want to state that preference, which is where for him he should have stopped, right? This is where he should have stopped. So at that point, once she says she doesn't want to answer it, he should have stopped. He doesn't stop. He wants to. It almost is. Let me not say he doesn't stop. What he ends up doing is, rather than just going, let me redirect the conversation, he becomes offended and then tries to flip the script by going on like, hey, it wasn't a sexual question. But the reality of the situation is it is a sexual question, right? And so at the end of the day, what he should have done was just been like, hey, my bad. Okay, guys, Kosheia, yeah, let's move on. Can I ask another question? Is that okay? And then continue. Like that's all it should have been, but he didn't want to do that, So it's interesting to kind of see that particular perspective as well,
I'll give you another example that's non-sexual that happens, and the act itself is not always offensive. However, what happens afterwards, how the person responds, makes it offensive, right? So let's say you and me are walking. I don't know you, you don't know me, and I step on your foot, right? And then you look at me and you're like, "Ow, you stepped on my foot. You scuffed my shoe." And I look at you and I'm like, "No, I didn't. You scuffed my shoe. You fell on me." And when we clearly know the order of events and what happens, right? Those things can then escalate, and now we can have an argument and a bigger issue. Some people may or may not be offended at some people go 0 to 60 if somebody steps on their foot, right? you know most people are going to forgive the offense if you're like, "Oh, my bad, I'm sorry." You know what I mean? So if I step on your foot and I acknowledge it and I'm like, "Oh, shucks, I'm sorry," we go on about our days and we live to fight another day. But when I don't acknowledge the fact that I did something that you didn't like, and then I try to just brush past it, or I try to tell you you did it, or there was really no offense that happened, or nothing happened. Nobody stepped on your foot, bro. What are you talking about? When clearly we know what happened. So I think that's one of those things that's how the situation ballooned and to be bigger than it probably needed to be, because he just should have just owned it.
Yeah, and I think that's just the reality of the situation. He just owned it. We wouldn't be here if he had just owned it. It would have been a move on situation, right? And like I said, the major reason why I was highlighting it was because what she was really highlighting was actually letting us know that the major offense is in the fact you're not respecting the boundary, number one, and number two, when she said no, your response. That was where she had a real issue. And I think that's actually where the major aspect is that when she said no, you tried to pretend as if you don't know what happened. You know what I mean? That is where I was more focused on when it came to him, rather than the actual question. And now I'm trying to make it very clear, and I think people are going down the wrong lane when I'm talking about this, right? The question itself is not inappropriate. You think it's inappropriate. That's fine. Other people are asking sexual questions to other people. It's not inappropriate. But once a person then says it's inappropriate to me, then we go with that same lane. With Kosheia, where she found the issue was once she said she didn't want to answer it because she felt like, you know what, she didn't want to answer the sexual preference as a question in a sense to say, hey, look, this is my preference. I don't want to be talking about it just yet. Maybe she's thinking about her reputation and everything like that. Let's just pivot. She's not pissed off. She's not angry. It's the moment he decides to try and flip it is where there's a big issue. You know what I mean? And so in that aspect, and people keep saying it's a first meeting. It's not the first meeting. So we need to stop trying to add a narrative that we want to add this narrative to it. It's a first meeting. People are asking people sexual questions on the first meeting. He asks Patricia and he asks also as well Patrice. He asked him a sexual question and he answered it. Let's not make it down more than it actually is. He asked that question already and people already did it. So the issue is not that he asked on the first day or even asked it. The issue is a person has said they didn't want to answer that question. That's why I'm actually tussling a little bit. I'm not tussling for the question itself. The question itself, if you think it's inappropriate, that's your business. But he asked it, and other people have asked it and said, cool, they're going to answer it. But Kosheia said she don't want to answer it. And at that point, you shouldn't then try to spin the narrative like you're being immature for not wanting to ask it. That then for me is where I felt is a bit more scary because you are hearing what she's saying and you definitely can tell the question is of a sexual nature and you're pretending as if you don't know what the frick she's talking about. Not only did you do that, then you flipped it to try and then you flipped it to try and even then say to her, you're immature. So now you're flipping it and you're trying to make her the problem. That's not now about him throwing curveballs. That's him now being manipulative. And that's where I find that there's more fear. You should be more scared of somebody who, when they're in the wrong, are willing to gaslight you and turn it around on your head as if you were talking madness. That's where I fear it. You know what I'm saying to you? Asking that question ain't a problem. Ain't no problem. You know what I mean? Ain't no problem. You know?
Yeah, and I think I fell into the same category when we were talking about it when we had the panel the other day, when I said that she opened the door for inappropriateness to happen by, mushing him when they were when they were at the bowling alley. And I think this is something, and we've talked about this on a couple of different shows, whether it's Married at First Sight, this show, other shows we may talk about, is sometimes we will talk about the nuances of something and people want it to be very black and white. And although it is, and I just don't understand, like, although it's very black and white, and I don't think either one of us has said, and I don't necessarily share 100% what you're thinking. Like, I don't think there's
Of
sexual
course.
tension between the two of them. I think they
That's fair.
just, maybe they challenge each other, whatever. But I don't personally see the sexual tension. I'm not going to say it exists or it
That's
doesn't.
fair.
I just personally
That's
don't
fair.
see that aspect of it. Now, what I can understand is the nuance, because I talked about it when we did it when we discussed the show the other day, and the incident that happened with them is because sometimes you can look at different aspects of a situation and you can see, oh, I can see how maybe this triggered that and that started that. It doesn't make how the person responds right. We can all agree. I don't think you're saying it. I feel comfortable speaking for you. I'm not saying it. We all are saying Alonzo's responses to Kosheia are 1,000% wrong. He's wrong for the way he's responded. He's wrong that he didn't respect her boundaries. He's wrong for continually to try to gaslight her on the scenario, right? He's wrong. There's no disputing that. What we're talking about, and I think what we're exploring, is was the question appropriate or not? Slash, how did Kosheia really feel about the question that he asked her? She's saying she didn't feel the question was inappropriate. She wants to make the distinction because she wants to say, hey, listen, he can ask me anything I want. Because some people are like that. Ask me anything you want to ask me. I'm an open book. However, doesn't mean you have a right to the answer. So I think that's where, what as I'm listening to you, I think that's what you're trying to say is like, hey, he had a right to ask, or it was okay for him to ask her. She chose to not answer. That's where they're at the argument. The argument isn't necessarily about the question, but how he responded to her when she chose not to answer the question.
Yeah. And maybe sexual tension is not the right word to describe what I'm seeing. I think it's more I'm seeing mental linguistics, right? I can see that two people are mentalists, and it felt like that at the beginning that they were almost jostling with one another. You know what I mean? And that's what I was kind of seeing. So maybe less sexual tension and more, maybe I should say, mental linguistics. When you meet someone that they're challenging you and you feel like you want to challenge them mentally, it's an ego thing sometimes as well, right? And so that's what what I was trying to describe a bit better. But yeah, I think you summarized it perfectly in that sense. You know that. I think you described it perfectly in the sense of that. You know, in this situation when it comes to Kosheia and Alonzo, yeah, he broke the boundaries, and you know it's a simple case of just honoring those boundaries and then kind of moving forward, really, because the conversation didn't end. And do you know how I knew it was more ego than anything? It's the very end. Like when he saw at the very end, he could have left it as it was. He wanted to push her a little bit more. Not necessarily to maybe not, let's quote unquote, be sexual. Maybe I should change that, not be sexual. But more of a case, he wanted to get underneath her skin. He wanted to, right? Maybe that's a bit of ego. Maybe that's the mental linguistics. They were trying to have a bit of he's trying to tussle with her. Maybe he felt like he was being sunned a little bit. Whatever it was. But you could tell that straight away that he was trying to, at that very, very end scene, when he's like, I'm going to try again one more time. You didn't tell the whole story when you told this particular aspect, And it's almost like you ain't going to tell me, not necessarily when to stop, but you ain't going to do me like that kind of thing, you know? And he continued again, you know? So, yeah, I definitely agree with your statement. It's immature of him. He needs to learn how to, the pushing didn't need to happen. Once she said she didn't want to talk about it, she just moved on. You know what I mean? It would have been a quick apology, sorry, my bad, you know, and move it on and then continue. But, you know, hey, I would say, you know what I mean? Let me leave what it is, you know?
Another example, right? We're out on a date, and I'm out on a date with a woman. And at the end of the date, I lean in for a kiss and she says no. You know, and then I try to sneak and kiss her on the side of her cheek and like get a part of that's wrong. It's inappropriate because it wasn't me leaning in for the kiss that was necessarily wrong, because maybe I misread the signals. Maybe we just weren't understanding each other. You know, sometimes things happen, right? So she says, no, I'm good, you know. So and as long as I back up, right, get out of her personal space where she has now told me no, the next step for me to do is to say, oh shoot, I'm sorry, right? Oh, you know,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to push, you know, I misread it, you know, and that's it. We move on.
This friendship, something, bitch.
Mm-hmm.
But if I continue and then then I try to tell her, oh no, you know you wanted this kiss. Now I'm wild, you know, because now I've taken a situation which, you know, is slightly uncomfortable to making it really terrible because now I'm not respecting what she's told me.
And I think that's a perfect example of what I think we're trying to highlight here. You know, that initial response isn't the issue. The initial response isn't the issue, right? Because you're on a date. You know what I'm saying to you? You might be flirtatious. You know, I commended Alexis for her flirtation because she understood and read the room. Now, at first, Jonathan said, do we have to go there? Then he said, okay, cool, I'm going to go there. What it is. He was comfortable. She read the room correctly. Earlier on in the episode 1, when Alonzo is talking to both Patrice and Patricia, he asks a question, 3 words to describe sex. And both ladies actually described it. Slow, gentle, this. Patricia was like, was it Patricia or was it Rashina? It might have been Rashina. And she was like, nasty. And he was like, I like where you're going, that nasty. Now, no one's accusing him of being inappropriate in that moment. You know why? Because it was the right moment, because the people were ready to accept it. And I think that's why I'm making a distinction between the two aspects. Because some people are really jumping into it's inappropriate all the way. And it's like, no, you have to read the room and the context of what's happening in that immediate moment. If you are there talking to a woman and you say this and you get it wrong, you should apologize and say, sorry, I misread the signs here. I apologize. That keeps everybody safe and accountable. You get what I'm saying to you? Because it can happen to you. You may have misread the energy and misread the sign. And if that's the case, you apologize and you move forward. You don't do what our brother did, which is that you gaslight the person. And then I've missed a kiss and I go to you, well, you know what? It's because your dumb ass was, you were turning your neck towards me. That's why. What? Now you're accusing of a party of being, of being at fault. And that is where I'm saying you should, if you want to have a problem with somebody's behavior, that is the problem with Alonzo's baby you should have with. That's the major part, because that's where it gets scary. Go for it, Sean.
Now, what I'll say is even better. What we've learned just, some of the learning we've had to do with as men. And I think this is what some of the things that the ladies want to hear from us, right? So I would say if we had a redo to this, although Alonzo should have apologized to her, right? We can all agree at the very, I think I didn't see any guy in the comments, even men that were commenting under this post, because it's going somewhat viral now, the clip of the show. Even guys were like, nah, bro. Even normal guys that would might defend nonsense was like, hey, he was dead wrong for that. He should have just took the L. Now, I think next level guys, like guys that really want to, be in tune and be in line with consent and understanding women, before he even played this game with her, he should have said, hey, listen, we're going to play this game. I'm going to ask you some questions. Some of them are sexual. Some of the questions, or some of the questions are a little risque. How do you feel about that? We're going to play a little game. How do you feel about some of the questions a little, and then, maybe, and even if he did that and she said, now, if he did something like that and she was like, cool, I'll let you know. Right? Let's play the game, but I'll let you know. Then he's like a million times worse. Now he's inappropriate all around, because if he prefaced it that way and she was like, okay, let's play the game, I'm cool with that. Because to me, maybe they did have a conversation beforehand, because maybe that's why she's making the distinction at the question in itself, because for her to say it wasn't inappropriate, the question, then maybe they had a conversation beforehand. But this guy is still so far gone that once she said stop, I don't want to, I don't think you need to know that. Maybe in his mind, which is very limited, if he's like, well, I told you beforehand we were going to play the game. Or why didn't you ask me? Why didn't you ask me if I thought this was, no, he didn't ask her that. He didn't have a pre-discussion as I'm fleshing it out, talking it through, because at the end of the day, he says, well, you should have stopped and asked me, if the question was sexual. And then he still continuously doubled down and did his little YouTube video saying that it's not sexual. So I think we got there.
I even play it.
Yeah.
I even played a little YouTube clip so you can see it. Here we go.
Yo, there he is. Yo, Zoe, what's up, man? Hey, congratulations on the show. Ready to Love season 9, man. Y'all going up, man. Hey, you got the internet in a frenzy, though, man. We seen the last episode. What is going on with you and Cole? Man, she was talking about in the conversation, you was talking about choked and spanked. Okay. What's going on? Is this sexual, or what are we doing here?
Well, look, first and foremost, I love the edits. I love how they giving it up. It's cool. I ain't no hater. But listen, understand that. You ever seen your girl cooking in the kitchen and you spank her on the butt?
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Cool. Or if she getting laundry and she bent over, you ever smack her in the butt there? I do you one better. You ever give your girl a kiss and you choke her? That's not sexual. Or, you get that aggressive type. You're like, what you doing, girl? It's just different facets, So I love the edits. I love how they give it up. I like to push the boundaries sometimes. So if you thought that question was wild, I got 124 more with my new game. It's called Don't Be Toxic.
New game? Hold on. What is this new game? What type of game is it?
Well, it's actually a party game that I'm coming out with. Well, that I do have out right now. So
boy, that
I want to speak on it just a little bit. Not right now. I actually got to run. So I appreciate this information, but
Hey, all right, man. Appreciate it, man. Hey, man.
Oh, man.
Hey, man. Good luck in the future, man. Stay up, Zoe.
Man, yo, shout out GSINAPOD, man.
Now, that for me is concerning. See that? Now that is what I find concerning, right? That even till now, we're still trying to deny the fact that it's a sexual question. I don't get what the point of denying it's a sexual question. It's a sexual question, right? It's a sexual question. So for me personally, I don't know why he thinks it wouldn't be sexual. That's why I said that the greater offense that people need to be offended by is the fact is what Kosheia was actually offended by. The fact that you in your head don't think this is sexual tells me you're tapped. It's not the question. She actually got it correctly. Kosheia understood it absolutely 100%. What's really tapped about you is you are denying what your question actually is. And by you denying your question is, I don't want to have a conversation about this anymore. That is why I feel like she left that table. Because like at this point, I'm arguing with somebody who's got no sense at all. You're telling me the sky is green when we can see it's blue. You're pissing on me and calling it rain. Like that is why I would say that that's a scary place. Because that person in that space, all right, is having fugazi moments, some convenient amnesia, and then will willingly gaslight you and be like, that's not how it happened. Like it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. There should be a limitation to how much carnage you want to bring to the table. There should be a limitation for how much of a curveball you're trying to throw when you're trying to date. And in that particular aspect, I would say that this brother is not ready to love. Because if he's willing to do that, that's a problem. I don't think that somebody who's doing this kind of stuff is ready to love. And that's just the reality of the situation. His question wasn't an issue. It's the behavior after that is very scary. A lack of accountability. Okay, maybe he didn't have to apologize, but he could have easily redirected and it could have easily taken the conversation elsewhere. Since he's got 124 questions, there was no need for him to stumble on that particular question. He could have gone, do you know what, we'll move past that question. I've still got a few other questions left. That's what's scary. For me personally. At this point, Lamar's tame. Lamar's acting foolish, but at this point, Lamar's tame. You know, compared to what our brother did, and I think that's why.
No, don't minimize Lamar. He's wild. He's wild. He's wild. They just.
I try to save him.
It's just a little different, you know. We haven't seen, but I don't know. You know, the brothers.
I try to save him.
The brothers are real. They're letting us down, man. Because I think, unfortunately. And I think one of the ladies said this in the comments, and it's true. It's like more of us men need to really talk about consent and really help our other brothers to fully understand what it looks like, what it feels like, because some people are still operating in a very antiquated point of view, and it needs to change. You know, when I sit and talk to some of, you know, my family members that are women and hear some of their experiences, it just makes me just cringe. It breaks my heart, you know, and I just need more of us men to be aware, because this is how these things kind of, and I understand like why some of the ladies are just getting very, you know, it's very triggering, because this is how this stuff starts, and we don't want to like, you know, have a whole, you know, campaign against Alonzo, right? But what I'm saying is, as men, we do need to understand when a woman sets a boundary, whatever that boundary is, however great or small we think it is, we need to respect her boundary. And I think and I think that was his problem, because he was like, I don't see it from your perspective. To me, like it's like he believes this, right? So he's gonna sit here and talk about a kiss, talk about a smack on the butt is not sexual. He's like convinced himself of this. Whatever it is to you, it is to you. And you also have to understand it's going to change from woman to woman. So what one woman likes, what one woman will tolerate is going to be different one to the next. How one woman feels about you versus how another woman may feel about you is very different. We can't carte blanche expect every woman that we interact with to treat us the same way. You know what I mean? So I think like, because there's like, and I'll land my plane here, but there's like a meme. There's like memes that float around the internet and gifs, right? And one is a picture of just like a guy that looks like a gremlin, and then it's a guy that all women are universally attracted to, right? Like a Idris Elba or, you know, whatever, a handsome guy. And they'll say when a guy does this, you know, the guy that looks like a gremlin, he's harassing her. And when a guy looks like this, it's
He's
fine.
it's fine, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not true.
because it's how she feels about him. It doesn't
Yep.
matter. It's up to her, the woman. And I like people like try to defend this, like, yeah, it depends on the person, because somebody, yeah, because that's your right. It's the same for us, right? Like, we don't like everybody. We don't like every woman that comes into our presence, right? So if there's a woman that's attractive and flirts with us, we're gonna be open. But if there's a woman that comes to us and we're not attracted, we're, 9 times out of 10 are not gonna be interested, right? We're not gonna treat her the same way, let's say, right? So it's okay, and I think we need to just normalize respecting when the woman says no, or says I'm not with it.
Yeah, and that's simply what it is, isn't it? That's simply what it is. And so I think the key part here for any man out here is obviously read the room. Read the room, and when the room has been read for you, accept the room has been read. Do you know what I mean? Like, just accept the room has been read. Like, just don't go any further than that. The room has been read, and it's been told to you that the person doesn't want to do anymore. You know what I'm saying to you? It's just like it's that simple. I think we make it more difficult than it actually needs to be in life, and it's just like you don't have to make it any more difficult. In reality, yeah, that situation just doesn't work, right? Because you've gone too far, and all you have to do is just do a U-turn and be like, hey, my bad, I got it wrong. Let's move forward. Maybe as she gets comfortable, maybe we can ask those kind of questions a little bit later on. But you don't have to. You know what I'm saying? You just have to read it again. People flirt, and like you said, that was a good example between the gremlin and the good-looking guy. Yeah, the reality is a person wants that attention. The other person doesn't want that attention, and that's the key part. I just think that with Alonzo, I just felt with Alonzo when it came to the situation, that's my biggest issue with him was that he gaslit the heck out of not just Kosheia but also us as an audience. Like, I don't know what he's talking about is is sexual, and I think um, that is the biggest problem, because even when we're talking about pushing a boundary, technically it wasn't that even push a boundary. He actually just literally tried to deny us that the event actually happened. Um, you know, tried to deny that it was actually more difficult than it actually happened. It's like, bro, it happened. That like the situation did happen. You did say it. He's almost like as if like it never happened. Like, he's like, yo, I never mentioned anything sexual to you. I never said anything that was there. I never said anything that was kind of lines to you. What you talking about? And that for me is like, yeah, that's it. If we're going to talk about big issues, let that be one. Yeah. At that point, I don't expect Kosheia to go back to him again because you've gaslit the situation.
Yeah, and I think like we just need to normalize. It's okay to apologize. It's okay to admit that you made a misstep. And I think that's the ego and the pride and the immaturity that we see in him, right? Because in a real life moment, and life is full of choices and decisions, right? So we see how you have to understand, like, every choice you make, every decision you make is going to lead you down a path. And it's like in that very moment, you're on, not only are you in real life, but you are now on camera. So you need to be thoughtful enough to say, hey, listen, how do I, this just makes me think, like, how do you respond in an argument? How do you respond in other situations? How do you have a clear view to understand, like, hey, when somebody is telling me X, maybe I could take a step back and say, oh, my bad. Like, he had no room for that. Like, he sat and listened to her explain, and then you see her getting upset. Like, we watch her on camera. I don't care about editing. I don't care what else was left on the cutting room floor. In that moment in time, we see her getting upset, and you made a choice to drag it out even further and still continue to push a topic, even if you didn't agree with her. You could have just been like, I see how upset she is. We just gonna table this for now. And that's the part where that behavior, he's got to learn better. And to your point, he's definitely not ready to love, because if you are ready to love, you have to be ready to resolve conflict effectively. You have to be ready to be able to be wrong. And he displayed none of those characteristics. And then to do this little advertisement for this game it's very immature and silly. right? You should be 124 ways to apologize is what this game should be called. Is what your next game to should be called. 124 ways to understand respecting somebody's boundaries, because not doubling down and trying to make light of the situation where you just messed up royally.
You ain't telling lies, man. Yep, you ain't telling lies. All right, guys, we're gonna bring that to an end. I think we've killed that topic to its bitter end. So, leave your comments down below in the section. If you agree or disagree, let us know your thoughts. As always, and make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notification of the uploads. We'll be back soon. Much love, much appreciation. See you soon. They try to take me out. Sorry, guys.